It seems like when Hypixel release a new update or a new item, it would just be too easy to make it make sense. What I mean by that is, what seems to be the blatantly obvious thing sometimes just isn't actually done or implemented. Today we're going to be taking a look at and testing some weapons in Hypixel Skyblock that are the greatest missed opportunities. Weapons that aren't really that good or useful, but with a little tweak could be amazing. Well, in fairness, some of them need a little bit more than a little tweak, but we'll get to that shortly. Well, first of all, we're going to have to start at the museum, because this is a weapon that, well, yeah, there's a reason why nobody really uses it, but there's a pretty good reason why people could use it if something was done. Or maybe not anymore, I think the opportunity is kind of missed. And that weapon is, of course, the Scorpion Foil. Now, this is pretty relevant at the moment because of, Skyblock's most recent update in Spider Slayer. And I think most people would have been of the understanding that this weapon would be relatively heavily involved in the update. That might not make a whole lot of sense simply looking at the weapon right now. I mean, the only thing that really gives a hint as, it could have been used in the Spider Slayer update is at the bottom it says Dungeonization price 20 Spider Essence. So it costs 20, or it costs Spider Essence to actually star it. But other than that, it doesn't really seem like anything. Now, if you look on the Scorpion Foils wiki, you can see in 2024 in November, so not actually that long ago, there was a 45 combat wisdom stat added to the weapon against spiders. Now, this was actually implemented properly in December. Of course, this was the alpha. Now, with that only being 8 months ago, it would only be right to assume that this Tier 5 Spider Slayer update was already pretty prevalent with the Hypixel admins, meaning that they were already probably planning, right? And if they only added that the combat wisdom to spider stat in December, that was what, 8 months ago. You would think that this weapon would probably be shaping up to be, one of the best new weapons with the new Spider Slayer update. I mean, it would have made no sense just to simply update it and make it better against spiders in terms of combat wisdom and spawning bosses, if they were planning on keeping Spider Slayer as it was before, because nobody even was really using this weapon. It doesn't give a damage buff towards spiders, and also everyone was just using, anything with magical damage towards spiders before as well, because it was just way quicker. Now this just makes me confused and leaves me questioning why. Just why? Because that stat was removed. And like removing or changing that stat seemed to have coincided with the Spider Slayer update. But I'm sure, as you all know, they added a new weapon to Spider Slayer, which makes even less sense because now we just have this weapon for no reason. But just before we go any further, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS, it gets yourself 5% off. You should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer Slayers and Dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry, make some coins, make sure to join. Also, if you've not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to do so. Now, of course, instead we got the Sting, which is just a better sword, and it looks like the 45 combat wisdom to spiders that was on the Scorpion Foil was yoinked and put directly onto this sword. Now, the Sting is a direct upgrade from the Tarantula Fang, and that itself is a direct upgrade from the Recluse Fang. Now, the Recluse Fang is unlockable at Spider Slayer level 3. Inexplicably, the Scorpion Foil is still a reward that is only usable at Spider Slayer level 5, despite it not really doing anything specific to Spider Slayer. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, the base damage and strength, or the base damage of this weapon is terrible, that's why it's not really usable. Now, its right-click ability is relatively decent, although with the base damage of the weapon being so bad, it's still not really usable, and everyone's going to skip this weapon. Considering at Spider Slayer level 6 you unlock the Tarantula Fang, which is simply infinitely better than the Scorpion Foil nowadays. Gives way more base damage, gives a little bit less strength, but gives crit damage as a bonus as well, along with a 200% damage bonus to spiders permanently, so it's not even a right-click ability, and the combat wisdom buff that was on the Scorpion Foil also got yoinked and put onto here. Whether it was on there or not, I'm not sure, but that's besides the point. Just to add to it, right? Just to add to it, all of these Spider Slayer weapons, their ability is that you can cut through this web, and this doesn't even have it. Anyway, you unlock the Sting at Spider Slayer level 8, and it just kind of means that the Scorpion Foil is, yeah, A huge missed opportunity, considering this could have been properly incorporated into the progression system of the weapons. Or they could have just straight up made this the best weapon, changed its stats, changed its unlock level, and not had the sting. I don't understand why we've got to. And I know quite a few people who would speculate about the Spider Slayer update coming out, you know, Spider Slayer Tier 5, and who had actually invested into the Scorpion foil because it just kind of made sense for that to be the new best weapon once they changed it. I don't know, it just all seems a bit strange with this, I can't lie. Also, something else to mention is this weapon is 6 million coins, probably mainly for the museum. The Recluse Fang is, I think it's like 250k I've just paid for it. So let's test these two weapons out against spiders, because I think it'll be funny. Alright, well I'm using the same setup with both, and neither weapons have reforges or enchantments. And our Scorpion foil deals 121k damage. Now if we use its right click ability, 168k damage. Kind of, need to, yeah, so 168, 169 with the right click. Okay, now let's use the Recluse Fang and see how much damage we deal. 214k. This weapon is a fraction of the price of this. You don't have to use its right click ability. Yeah, it's such a weird one, and I don't really know what to say. It's just not a great situation. I don't understand what's happened to this weapon. I don't understand why it wasn't incorporated into the update at all. It is definitely a missed opportunity and seems like a waste of time introduced in the Sting. Now on to the next, and in my opinion, what is by far the greatest missed opportunity in terms of a weapon that you can come across. I've talked about it before, but it's impossible to ignore, and the weapon is the Valkyrie. The only use this weapon really has is if you're trying to find a weapon that has good base ferocity. Its base ferocity is 66. Other than that, it seems like such a waste. Just like the Hyperion, the Scylla, and the Estrella, the Valkyrie is a Necron's Blade variant. Everyone knows the Hype is the best weapon in the game. Now the Scylla along with the Valkyrie is also really quite mid for what it should be. And the Estrella may be still a little bit better than the Scylla, but not quite as good as the Hype. I mean, you can make an argument for it. It gives you 20 true defense at base and quite a lot of defense, which is nice to have. The only real reason why any of these weapons other than the Hyperion hold their value so much is because they are crafted with a Necron's handle. But I'm gonna focus specifically on the Valkyrie because in my opinion, the area that this game lacks a lot in is melee weapons, and not the fact that there isn't enough melee weapons, it's just what those melee weapons do. Like, they all seem to end up being the same. And what I mean by that is, for instance, the Dark Claymore has a lot of base damage, and there's not really any added extra to it. It does a lot of damage, it has a bit of swing range, no other abilities. The Giant Sword is the same again really, it has a lot of base damage and it has a bit of swing range, it has a right click ability that nobody really uses because it's not very good. The same goes for the Shadow Fury, it does have a right click ability but most people are going to use it for its good damaging stats and relatively low price. The same goes for the Midas Sword. When this is fully upgraded it deals a ton of damage but not really much else. Now you've got the melee weapons that are used for Slayers, for instance like the Atom Split Katana, the Axe of the Shredded, yes I'm still going to call it the Axe of the Shredded, and so on, that are used because they just deal an absurd amount of damage to that particular Slayer boss. But when it comes to weapons that aren't meant to basically deal a lot more damage against a specific mob, they all end up being the same. And the crazy thing to me is the variant that should be what should be the best melee weapon in the game, which should be the equivalent of the Hyperion of the melee world, is literally not even considered. It's probably not even top 5. You know, you've got a Giant Sword, you've got a Dark Claymore, you've got a Midas Sword, then you've got other weapons. Okay, maybe it is just about in the top 5, but it should be number 1. Now, I think what would really set it apart is you could just literally play into that ferocity aspect. A base ferocity of 66 doesn't even guarantee an extra hit. What it's saying is if you use a Valkyrie, its only real added selling point is the fact that it deals a mid amount of damage, probably comparable to a Shadow Fury, somewhere between a Shadow Fury and a Giant Sword. And also, 2/3 of the time, you're going to be able to benefit from an extra hit from ferocity. Now, sure, that extra 30 odd ferocity is really easy to make up, meaning that majority of the time, if you're using a Valkyrie, you could probably quite easily get 100 ferocity. Which isn't bad, But then when you compare that price to something like a Dark Claymore, it seems pointless to use the Valkyrie because, I mean, you're going to probably be dealing a similar amount of damage with those 2 hits than you will in the 1 hit with the Claymore. Certainly not justifiable by 500 million at the moment anyway. I've tested the Valkyrie on numerous occasions, and the only time I've actually had fun using it is if you put the Dirty Reforge on it, which gives you base ferocity as well, and lead into a full ferocity setup. And while it still isn't as good as using other setups, it's fun. But to be honest, just to have a little bit of fun to test out doesn't mean it's a good or usable weapon. Hence why the Valkyrie, in my opinion, is the greatest missed opportunity for any weapon in Skyblock. And it is really, really disappointing, I'm not going to lie. Anyway, on to the next. And funnily enough, it's a weapon that I've just talked about in the past minute. Well, briefly mentioned. And that weapon is the Dark Claymore. Now, the Dark Claymore isn't a bad melee weapon, but the issue is melee weapons. It's relatively similar in damage to a giant sword, let's be completely honest, let's not get it twisted. It has the same base damage and gives an extra 100 strength, 30 crit damage and 2 swing range for an extra 100 million coins, give or take. But that's it. That's literally it. There's no right click ability that you would expect from what is probably the second best damaging weapon in the game. It's simply just swing and hit, something that you can do in vanilla Minecraft. Now, you might be thinking, oh, it's not that bad, but you've got to remember how this weapon is obtained. And I know nowadays, being able to do M7 is not the greatest achievement. I mean, for someone who doesn't enjoy dungeons, it's much better than what I can do. I'm not downplaying it, to be honest. I think if you can do M7, then I've got to say GG. But at the same time, a lot of people can do it nowadays. But when it comes to dungeons, it is still the most difficult by far floor to do, and is the greatest challenge that dungeons can kind of throw at you. So to be able to actually obtain a Dark Claymore, you've got to be able to consistently do M7s, unless you get really lucky and do one run and get the Claymore. Majority of the time, you're going to have to consistently do it. Now, the issue is that what should be one of the best melee weapons in the game, obtained from the hardest floor in the game, sits at like 200 million coins. You might think, well, that's not that bad, until you realise that it costs you 150 million coins to get it out of the chest. So dropping a Dark Claymore seems like a massive thing. However, it's 50 mil profit. Less than 50 mil profit once you account for taxes and AH fees. So realistically, you're probably going to be profiting closer to 45 million coins, which to me would seem like a huge disappointment. And also, it just leaves me a little bit confused. Now, why is what should be one of the best weapons in the game, from from the hardest dungeon floor in the game, one of the biggest challenges you can face in the game, why does it result in a 50 mil profit and not much more? Well, that's just simply because the weapon is not as good as it should be. But what can they do to improve this weapon? I mean, just giving it simply bit higher base damage and stats might increase the price of it a little bit and might make it that bit better because you're going to be able to do more damage. But honestly, that's not the answer. It needs some sort of unique selling point. It needs something else, like all of the other more expensive weapons have. The whole idea of the Dark Claymore is it's supposed to be some, like, old sword, you know, some old sword that's supposed to be mighty powerful. Why not have a right-click ability that increases its base damage by a ridiculous amount for a couple of seconds? It's on a cooldown of, I don't know, 20 seconds. But it means you can deal a stupid amount of damage on that one hit every 20 seconds or something. It seems really basic, but I feel like it would add something to the sword and actually make it more desirable. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe there's something else they could do to make it better, which there probably is. I just feel like it's such a waste, such a big drop to get, and it's such a little profit. But there's good reason for that too. But anyway, I'm sure there's way more items and weapons that are huge missed opportunities. You know, they can make little tweaks to make it that much better. I guess you can leave those in the comments if you think of any. Anyway, if you have enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.